what's up? My name is Dom. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel, I typically make bookish content, movie content, and anything else in between because I like to do whatever I want on this channel, and tonight is going to be movie and TV show content. For today's video, we are going to go over everything I watched in the month of January. This is coming out so late because February has just been a wild ride. I had so many Super Bowl celebrations. Go Eagles, go Birds, but also at the same time, if you don't want to get sick, don't go to a Super Bowl parade because I had a 103-degree fever that knocked me off my feet for a week. So that's why this video that was supposed to come out like the second week of February is coming out on either the last day or the first couple weeks of March. I also have a Flyers game tonight, so I am all geared up and I'm going to talk about as much as I possibly can before I gotta go. The alarm has been set on my phone, so it's a race against the clock. If not, like, I'll just finish it after the game, but you know how lazy I get. But without further ado, because we have so much to talk about, let's just jump right into the video. So the first movie I watched in January, meaning the first movie I watched in 2025, is 1955's Rebel Without a Cause. This stars James Dean, one of three movies, and Natalie Wood, and this is about a delinquent who moves to a new town. He's trying to start and have a better life. However, he falls in love with the girl next door, not realizing she already has a boyfriend, and mischief ensues. I really had to think about this movie when it came to whether or not I liked it, just because there were so many factors involved. And I did end up enjoying it. I really do like the found family in this film. I really like the concept of a troubled kid helping the disturbed kid. I've never actually seen that dynamic before. And I really did like watching James Dean's character fall in love with Natalie Wood's and how that played off each other. I have little grievances near the end just because I thought she moved on rather fast and jumped in James Dean's lap, but I have a suspension of disbelief and it was pretty cute. And just when it comes to all the characters in the film, despite how dangerous their antics were, it really did just feel like kids being kids, or what I imagine teenagers act like. Like, teenagers back then weren't much different from the teenagers from when I was a teenager and from the teenagers I'm observing today. And that leads me to my next point, just because this movie brings up a discussion that from what I was reading was pretty new back in the day. The discussion itself wasn't new, it was just that movies never really portrayed it before. It discusses parenting styles, how some kids act differently just because their parents are different, they act differently from the norm, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And then also what happens when your family tries to sweep things under the rug and how that can affect you. And thinking about the film through those lenses, I thought it did a really good job discussing that. Now, I didn't give this movie 5 out of 5 stars. I gave it 4 out of 5 just because something felt missing from this movie, and I really could not pinpoint what it was until I was discussing it with other people. It was through my discussions with my online friends that I realized this movie really is a product of its time, and if you truly want to get what the movie is going for and how it feels, if you want it to feel new to you, you do have to like go back in time in 1955 and watch this. And I'm saying it because it felt like something I have already seen before. And that's because I discovered through discussions and through just my own research, this movie was the first of its kind. It was the first one to dare delve into family dynamics that, you know, people don't typically bring to light. So in 1955, this troublemaker living with this family trying to hide him, that was a new concept. And it's funny because as I'm watching this movie, I was looking at certain scenes like I have definitely seen that before. Like, it's so clear so many movies that came out after this took inspiration from this film. One of them actually being West Side Story. There was a specific scene that I was watching and I was like, this is from West Side Story, but then I looked up when this movie came out versus when West Side Story came out, and actually West Side Story took inspiration from Rebel Without a Cause. So after having that discussion with people, it did make me like the movie more because I was about to give this 3 out of 5 stars, but luckily I had that discussion. I could see what this movie was truly going for and appreciate it for that. And it also made me realize how young James Dean was when he died. He was 24, and I was looking into his filmography and I was expecting, because I knew he died. I know he's not alive today. I just didn't realize he was 24 and died in an accident and only had like 3 movies, and this is one of those 3 movies. So very interesting film. I'm definitely glad I watched this because I know this is hailed as a classic. So like I said, I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. So the next movie I watched is a Hulu original with Anne Hathaway and Jessica Chastain, and that is Mother's Instinct. This is about two women from the 50s, 60s. Both of them are housewives and they were best friends, but then something traumatic happens that tests their friendship. So I don't really have a lot to say about this movie as opposed to Rebel Without a Cause. This movie is extremely predictable. I predicted everything plot point by plot point. I am semi-convinced that Anne Hathaway and Jessica Chastain only did this movie for the check. But that being said, I was still pretty tense throughout this whole movie just because I was interested to see like what shenanigans were afoot. Like I knew character A was going to kill character B, but how were they going to do that? I will say visually Anne Hathaway slays in this era's aesthetic. She looked gorgeous in this style and in this hairstyle and the makeup too. Jessica Chastain plays the paranoia really well. And something I actually appreciate about this movie is that the things Jessica Chastain was mulling over were small enough for these things to go either way. Like the things she was freaking out over, like as an audience member, say I couldn't predict the movie, it could have easily been Jessica Chastain like freaking out over nothing. And the only reason I knew she wasn't is because I know how these movies go. But I did appreciate it was the small things rather than something grandiose. And I will say I do think the reviews are way too harsh on the child actor in this. Some of y'all are mean, but I think he did an okay job. He did an okay job for an okay movie overall. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. Then I watched an Oscar Best Picture nominee, not knowing it was going to be a nominee, and that is The Brutalist. This 3.5-hour movie is about a Hungarian Holocaust survivor who moves to Pennsylvania, and a very rich man takes a liking to his work as an architect. I really like the idea of a post-war story because we get a lot of movies and books and what have you that take place during the war, and not a lot of things explore post-war. So that's something I liked about this movie. Philadelphia represent. The first hour is in the neighborhood of Kensington. You don't go there today, but back then apparently it was all the rage. And it later takes place in Doylestown, where I have been, and that's a really nice town. I really like the exploration of the American dream in this film. The American dream being, you know, sometimes we start from the bottom and work our way up, and I thought in this movie it showed that very well. Our main character was at the bottom of the barrel in the beginning of this movie, and you slowly watch him become a celebrity. And he had his missteps throughout the way. It wasn't like a perfect trajectory, which I thought was a great way to show that. I thought the guy who played Van Buren did a great job playing a sleaze. I was suspicious of him from the very beginning. I never trusted that character. And I really liked the relationship dynamic between Laszlo and his wife. I was expecting them to jump right into the romance right away, and I was thinking, you know, that's not really realistic in real life, especially when you've been gone for so long. Like you're both gonna have your issues you need to work out. And that is how the movie handled it. They had their ups and downs in the beginning. They had a lot of downs in the beginning. Their relationship was very, very strained, and I liked seeing the two of them work on that. I like the music in this film. It does sound brutal to the ears, and I really did like Adrian Brody's acting in this. I think I spent like the first half of this movie thinking it was an actual biopic and not a fictional story. But like I said in the beginning of the video, this movie is 3.5 hours long, and luckily it has an intermission, because for me personally that intermission was very much needed, which is kind of funny to me because I've sat through movies over 3 hours long and didn't need it. Like I saw Killers of the Flower Moon in theaters and did not need an intermission, so I don't know what it was about this movie where I truly needed that. Like, and it's not just because I had to go to the bathroom or I was hungry. Like I was actually getting antsy. And then when the intermission was over, it did take me a bit to get back into the groove of things. And oddly enough, despite the runtime, I thought the end of the movie, like the last 5 minutes, felt very rushed. I didn't mind the ambiguity of one character, like, and if you go online, you'll still see a bunch of discussions about what happened to this character. But it's just the speech you hear at the end of this movie, and then the very last scene made me feel like I was missing something, and I still feel like I'm missing something, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if that's intentional. It's so like a skill issue on my part or intentional on the director's part. I don't know, but I don't think the ending to this movie is perfect. I'm not gonna say it's not worth it because it's not a terrible ending. I just wish some things were changed, but I also can't tell you what those things should be. But overall, I gave this movie 4 out of 5 stars. So for my next movie, I went down a list on my phone. So I have 7 different lists of types of movies I'm trying to go through. We got Oscar Best Picture winners. We got all of Wes Anderson movies, all of Vincent Price movies. So number 7, I decided to start January with number 7 because I did not get to a lot of these movies in 2024. I just have miscellaneous, just random movies I saw people talking about online. And the list is in order from the oldest to the newest. So the first one was Rebel Without a Cause. The next one is a movie called Watership Down. This is about a rabbit's home that is under threat, so a group of rabbits leave so they can find a new home. It seems like the typical story when people talk about this online is that people's parents back in the 70s and 80s took them to see it in the theaters thinking it was a happy-go-lucky kids movie, and then it was very much not a kids movie. And I will say, after all the talk online, I was definitely expecting something more gruesome visually, because people keep mentioning all like the fighting in this movie. I was expecting like a gruesome bloody mess from start to finish, but you don't really see a bloody mess until like the last quarter of this film. But that didn't really ruin things for me because thematically I could still see why this movie is not for children, why you do need to be a bit more mature to understand it. There are deep dives into leadership roles, as in what it's like to be what is that word? Authoritarianism versus democracy. Though they're leaving a very strict authoritarian group of rabbits, and they're trying to make a democracy within their own group. And a lot of these things aren't handled with juvenile language. They are discussed, and I'm not just saying because there's a bunch of swear words. It's just the way the topics are discussed. They're not dumbed down for children. They are spoken about in a way adults would speak to each other. And something else in this film that I really liked the concept of the black rabbit, and just wish they were able to expand on that more. But other than that, I don't really have much else to say about the movie. Like, I was expecting something different, which maybe tainted my level of enjoyment, but it also wasn't ruined when I saw something I wasn't expecting. Just in the end, I think I learned that this movie isn't typically my cup of tea, but I'm glad I saw it anyway, and I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then I went to the theater to see a horror movie, and that is The Wolf Man. And this is about a man whose father dies, so he takes his family to his home in the woods, but a creature lurks. Do not go into this movie thinking it's a remake of the 1940s Universal movie. The guy just took the title and made his own story. And it does actually have genuinely scary scenes. Maybe not scary, but genuinely creepy scenes. In the beginning of the movie, there's a scene with the guy on the lookout, and that like creeped me out a bit just because of the silence, and he was in the shadows. That definitely sent a chill up my spine. And there is a jump scare where it worked on me. I genuinely jumped in my seat. This movie attempts to discuss generational trauma, and that is definitely the main theme of this movie, but something about this movie didn't really work for me, even though I was like tense at certain points. There were those genuinely creepy scenes. It's just overall, when thinking about the story itself, I don't really like this movie, and I think it's because of the chemistry or lack thereof between the actors. Individually, they were fine, but when they were acting as a group, I did not feel that familial chemistry, so that it ruins the whole like generational trauma vibe. So because of that, I gave this movie only 2 out of 5 stars. But then I rewatched the movie because Watership Down inspired me to watch this, even though it has nothing, there's no similarities, they have nothing to do with one another. But I did rewatch Bambi. If you don't know what this is about, it's about a baby deer named Bambi and his life from the time he was born up until adulthood. And I cried during the mom scene that's like right smack in the middle of the movie. Didn't cry anywhere else, but that scene gets me. The older I get, the more that scene gets me. And also, the older I get, the more impressed I am with the music in this movie, because it's all music. There aren't any sound effects. So it's like it's an orchestra creating all those sound effects. So like during the rain scene, rather than raindrops, you're hearing like piano keys or strings or little pings. Instead of thunder, you're hearing someone bang on cymbals. And the older I get, the more I like that, just because it makes me feel like I'm watching a ballet. The next movie I watched was also in theaters and is another horror movie, and that is Nosferatu. This is about a vampire that's infatuated with a young woman. It's also a Robert Eggers film. I have seen his short film, A Telltale Heart. It was one of my favorite films of last year. I've seen The Witch, absolutely loved it. I've seen The Lighthouse, hated that one. I thought that one was so boring. And I have not yet seen The Northman, but I was excited about this one, especially because I've seen the original Nosferatu, those silent film from the 1920s. So I was excited to see what this film had to offer and what I would think about it, especially given my mixed views on Robert Eggers in general. And I will say right off the bat, the Oscar nominations this movie got are well deserved. It was nominated for makeup and hair, cinematography, and one more, I think costume design. All three are so well deserved. Like when it comes to the hair and makeup and costuming, we always talk about, or I shouldn't say always, but we often have that new term for people, the iPhone face, and that's when like an actor is in a historical piece and yet they don't look like they're from that era. They look like, if the movie takes place in the 1850s, the actor looks like they've seen an iPhone before. I don't have that feeling for anyone of this film. And this was the film that made me realize the whole like iPhone face effect. It's all down to the hair, makeup, and costuming. So whoever worked on this film deserves that Oscar because everyone involved in this looked like they came straight from a photo that was taken during this time period. Especially Lily Rose Depp. She's the first one to come to mind, and I really like that still of her. They use it a lot in the advertising where she has the tears streaming down her face and she's all black. That's the scene I'm thinking of specifically when I talk about this. And Aaron Tyler Johnson is in this, and I didn't recognize him at all. And someone else who's in this, Nicholas Hoult, I think his name is. What was he in recently? He was in that Renfield movie recently, but something about him, he just has an old-timey face, so it works for this. And the woman who played the Baldy in Deadpool vs. Wolverine, she's in this, but they did her up really well. Just everyone in this movie looks immaculate. And I loved a lot of the imagery of this film, which goes back to the cinematography. One of my favorite scenes, one of the most well-done scenes, is when you see like the overhead of the city and the vampire's hand. Absolutely loved that. And I really love how grotesque the ending was. Some of my favorite shots in this movie are from that ending. But any grievances I have about this film come from the plot itself. What the fuck is my light bulb doing? I have one light bulb that works out of the three. It's just my ceiling is 12 feet high and I can't reach it with a ladder. I'm waiting for my friends who have very tall ladders to come over and fix that. But back on topic here.
If that was you on the phone and you on the bus, then who was flickering the lights? Nosferatu!
I feel okay overall when it comes to the plot itself. It does have a lot to do with how the characters are written and then the acting itself. The characters themselves feel very static to me. I didn't feel a lot of development throughout the film, and what little development there was kind of rushed and not really fleshed out. Acting-wise, the majority of everyone in this movie did okay. They did well with what they were given, especially Willem Dafoe. I think Lily Rose Depp is my least favorite actress in this whole thing, just because, and I don't even know if it's because of her or because of the writing of her character. I just felt like in every scene she was doing the same thing over and over again. They constantly had her facing the camera with the one singular tear, which like looked good aesthetically. I just wish they would spice it up a bit. So I just think how static the characters feel is kind of what ruined the movie for me. Willem Dafoe stole the show, and I'm shocked he's not getting like Oscar buzz for it, but whatever. Overall, I gave this movie 3 out of 5 stars. And then I did another rewatch because I watched the first Bambi movie. Of course, I had to watch the second movie. This takes place right when Bambi's mom dies, because you know how in the first movie his mom dies and there's a huge time skip to when he's an adult. So this movie takes place right after that moment, and it's him as a kid spending his childhood with his father. It's essentially a story about a single dad with his kid. And I was obsessed with this movie when it first came out. This came out back when I was like 10 years old. I remember watching it all the time until just one day I just stopped watching it and I hadn't seen it since. So this was my first time watching this movie in like over 15 years. And I still had a good time with it. I still think it's cute. The plot moves really fast, and a lot of the characters don't have as much screen time as I remember, so there's not really a lot of time to flesh them out. But it's still pretty funny. And I liked all the callbacks to the original, and the main song of this movie is still a banger. I was obsessed with it back when I was 10. My one grievance with this movie though is that it does have like an actual soundtrack with actual sound effects rather than like the orchestral pieces I was talking about for the first movie. So I wish this movie could have done the same thing, but this was also a straight to DVD sequel, and I know these movies did not have the budget of their theatrical releases. Of the first movies that had theatrical releases. So It is what it is. I'm glad I rewatched it. And then the last movie I watched in January, I didn't mean to watch. It's just there's just so much bad shit happening in January. I was getting really stressed out because of all the new executive orders were stressing me out. And then this was the day, actually, the night when Philadelphia, that one plane nosedived into the streets of one of our neighborhoods, and I was just so stressed out because the news was just bad news after bad news. So I needed something wholesome to watch, so I decided to rewatch Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. This is about a young princess. The evil queen is jealous of her and casts her aside, and then she meets these 7 men. And it was cute, it was wholesome, it was exactly what I needed. There's a lot more songs than I remember, and I need someone with the prince's voice to sing to me every night. The Prince Charming in this movie has a gorgeous voice, but I will also say I didn't really watch this movie because I had this on in the background while I was doing chores. But I'm counting it nonetheless. It was a good, wholesome time. And now we move on to the TV shows. The first one I'm going to talk about is an anime that I started in 2024, but I only watched the first 2 episodes and then I finished in 2025. And that is Dandadan. This is about a boy and a girl who befriend each other. The boy believes in aliens and the girl believes in ghosts, so now they're trying to prove to each other that these things exist. So this was a very well received anime. A lot of people like this. One of my coworkers loves this. All my friends loved it. My friends in my online community would talk about it every week as it was coming out, and they're like, you have got to see this. So I only seen it because of the hype. And unfortunately, y'all, I fear I am missing something. I don't like this. My first issue with this was that this is not the plot that was advertised to me. What was advertised to me is the plot I read aloud to you guys. But you figure out in episode 1, that whole issue gets resolved in episode 1. So the actual plot of this is they're fighting these beings. Both aliens and ghosts do exist. So now the 2 of them have to work together to fight them off. There's more to it than that, but I just don't want to spoil anything. So I'm going to leave it at that, but I just would have very much rather have the plot that was sold to me than what this actually is. I'll say right away, I really like the monsters' designs in this. I thought they were all pretty cool. I really like Okarun's design when he does his little transformation. And his friendship with Momo is really cute and arguably the best part of the show. It feels very realistic to how teens act around each other. But when it comes to things I don't like about the show, one is just the repetitiveness. It felt like it was constantly repeating itself with very little progression. I don't really care for anyone outside of the 2 main protagonists, and even then that's a stretch. Like I said, their dynamic is arguably the best part of the show, but them as individual characters aren't my favorite types of characters. The humor in the show is just not for me, and I really don't like the nudity and the fan service in this, especially because these characters are not adults. They are children. They are teenagers. The first episode I watched on an airplane and was not warned that it's not safe for work, and I was like, oh, especially because of what happened. And there's another scene where the 2 characters are naked and then together. And I don't like that in my media when the characters themselves are children. No. So I'm really sorry to say that Dandadan is not for me, and I don't think I will be continuing with season 2 that comes out this year. Another show though that I really liked, I started in 2024, I finished it in 2025, I had to finish it in 2025 because that's just how the episodes aired, and that is Star Wars Skeleton Crew. This takes place in the Star Wars universe. It asks the question, what if Star Wars took place in the suburbs? This kid named Wim, is his name Wim? What the fuck is his name? One of the kids, he's really bored in his suburban planet until him and 3 others come across a pirate ship, and that they accidentally turn on, and next thing you know, they are flying outside of their planet and now need to find their way back home. I don't know what I was expecting from the show. I went into it hesitant because people have a lot of things to say about the way Disney's handling Star Wars. This is actually some of my favorite Star Wars content. I had a lot of fun with this show. It's so fucking cute. I loved our little found family. All the kids felt like kids because they're all about 12 years old. So there's a lot of bickering, but then there's also a lot of bantering. The whole boy versus girl thing, because there's 2 boys, 2 girls. The leadership versus loser thing, and how they come at each other's necks. They played off each other really well, and everyone had some great chemistry, and just the way these characters were written and their relationship with one another just reminded me of me and my friends growing up, and the fact that they actually acted like kids, it added like a nostalgic factor to it, and it made the show even funnier. I really like Jude Law's character. You know from the beginning something is off about him, but he is just so fun to follow around. Like morally, he's a morally corrupt dude, but he's very compelling, and I had a great time with him. I like the look of the suburban planet. It was actually just kind of uncanny. I really like the character design of KB and like the thing with her head, like that was pretty cool. Neil needs to be protected at all costs. I knew I was gonna like him when I saw he looked like an elephant because I love elephants. I like the development of the friendship because in the beginning of the show they very much weren't friends. It was the boys versus girls, but I liked seeing the four of them all develop into one found family group. I really liked the episode, and that really helped with this too, where the episode explored their strengths and weaknesses, and I really liked how it just all came together in the end. And Jude Law's character, one of my favorite things about him is that his character stayed an asshole. I was expecting him to have a redemption arc, and I would have been disappointed if he did, so I'm really glad they stayed the asshole route. And when it comes to the pacing of the show, I think the pacing is fine, like it's pretty good actually, which I know is a really big critique with Star Wars shows right now, like the latest show, The Acolyte. I know that was like the biggest critique when it came to that show. But this one, I thought was fine. Literally, I had so much fun with the show. It was just one big, great adventure, and I hope it gets a season 2. Literally, my only gripe with the show is Carrie Condon's accent, because that woman, love her. I think she's a great actress, but she cannot fake an American accent to save her life. And my fire alarm is agreeing with me. But she has such very little screen time that it was easy to ignore. And another reason it's easy to ignore in Star Wars, because you could just say, oh, that's the accent of her planet. So like, you can have a suspension of disbelief. You can easily make up a headcanon about it. So it's not, so when I say gripe, it didn't ruin the show at all. It was just something I noticed. So I had a lot of fun with the show, and I would actually recommend this to people. So the next show, I don't really have much positive things to say about it. I have actually stopped watching the show, and that is Solo Leveling. Because season 2 started in January. I don't know where it's at because I only watched like the first 2 to 3 episodes. First of all, it takes place in a universe where these dungeons were showing up and people were given ranks that they cannot change. So they were given S rank, which is the best, A, B, C, D, E being the worst. No matter how much training you do, you cannot grow. If you are E, you are E forever. And our main character was given not only an E rank, but like the worst of the worst, until one day he grew strong, and now this like computer system of sorts shows up for him. That's basically it. I was having issues with the first season because everyone was like, peak leveling, and I'm like, where? Is Peak in the room with us right now? Because I was not having fun with it. It felt repetitive to me. There was no character growth until the last episode of season 1 where he gets this new power, and I was like, ooh, that's really cool. I will continue with season 2. Season 2 has the same issues I was having with season 1. My main gripe with the series is that our main character is way too powerful. He does not need to work hard for anything. There's no stakes in his battles. They are all predictable. And he doesn't struggle, which goes back to the fact there's no stakes. Like visually, do these fights look cool? Yeah, but I was expecting more with the whole like bring the dead to life power thing, but he just stands there while they do the fighting for him until they run out of energy, and then he starts fighting again, but he himself barely loses energy. He barely gets a nick on him. And I don't know, I like watching my characters struggle. I like watching them fight for what they want. And like, they show in one of these episodes, he goes from levels like 0 to 70 in this one kingdom so fast. And like, I don't understand what the point is anymore. It just got so boring. And I was talking to my friends online, and someone said, but like that's, as I was complaining, they're like, but that's the whole point of the genre though. It's a power fantasy. It's supposed to be like that. And like, someone else had my back. They also said it gets boring and repetitive. Another person said they had to stop reading the manhwa because of the same reason. It's just boring and repetitive and there's no stakes. So if that's the point of a power fantasy, I fear this genre is not for me. So this is a very unpopular opinion because this show is very well loved. I gave up like 2 to 3 episodes in season 2, and I will not be continuing. Which is unfortunate because I do own volume 1 of the manhwa, but I will be giving that up. And then the last show I completed in January, I do have positive thoughts on. It's another show I started in 2024. I think I started this around like the summer of 2024, but then a lot went on, so it took me forever, and I just finished it this month. And that is Star Wars Rebels. This is another animated show. It takes place between the prequels and the OG series. But this is about a group of rebels. Ezra joins, I think, what's called the Ghost Fleet. I don't actually remember what their fleet was called, but they are rebels and they are fighting against the Empire. This one took me a bit to get into. Clone Wars, I jumped right into it and loved it so much, and that's what people compare this show to. This show took me a while to get into because it definitely matures as it goes along. Season 1 is a lot more juvenile than the other seasons, and it's also a lot more episodic as they're, trying to garner an audience. But as the show goes on, it gets less episodic and more episodes start to build off one another, especially season 4. I love the expansion of the lore, and the show actually got quite emotional at times, including season 1, as juvenile as it felt. Like, the one scene, I think this is actually season 2 though, but the one scene that really got me is when Ahsoka realized who Darth Vader is. That hurt my heart so much, and then we didn't see Ahsoka again until the final season. Like, what the fuck? Because I don't know if you know this, but she's my favorite character in all of Star Wars right now. I'm an Ahsoka truther. I loved her since the beginning of Clone Wars. People warned me. They kept saying she was really annoying, would have to grow on you. I loved her the moment she was introduced in the first Clone Wars movie. She has been my favorite character since the beginning. I have always been there for her, and I loved seeing her more in this one. And I got giddy and like kicked my feet in the air when she showed up in what's it called, in season 4. And despite being for a younger audience, it still did have plot twists I wasn't expecting. Like, from the beginning, I thought I knew who Vector was, and then it ended up being someone I did not expect. I feel like who I expected would have been the corny route, so good on them for not doing the corny cliched route. I did like the addition of Thrawn. I just wish we saw more Darth Vader, especially because Darth Vader and Palpatine are such big villains in this era and in the OG trilogy. But at the same time, I see why they kind of veered away from them, because they wanted the show to be its own thing. So Thrawn was the villain of the show, and he was cool. I just wish we got more callbacks to, the OGs. Some parts of the show made me sad, especially knowing what happens later in the timeline. I'm thinking of the planet of Mandalore specifically, seeing them all celebrate like Sabine and her fam, and just knowing what happens to that planet like hurts. Like, I'm happy for them, but my heart also hurt for them. I really loved all the characters involved in our little found family, even the ones that took me a while to get into. Like, Zeb, wasn't really a fan of him at first, but he grew on me, and I'm glad he's a good addition to the universe. Hera, I think, is my all-time favorite. Besides Ahsoka, I think she's my all-time favorite in the show. When it comes to the ending itself, part of me wishes it was a bit more conclusive, but at the same time, I think the ambiguity for one character really fit his character. And honestly, I do have to give props to the showrunners for daring to end a kid's show on an inconclusive note like that. I don't know if I want to use the word inconclusive, but for daring to end it with an open-ish ending. I have to give them props for that. Because I know a lot of people hate open endings. They want things to have answers, but I do like the idea of having children ask themselves things and what they think happened to a specific character. Speaking of characters, I have to say our main character, Ezra, his character arc is insane. Ezra, to me, is what Ahsoka was to other people. Like, Ahsoka started out as annoying for people and then she grew on them. Ezra, for me, that was Ezra for me. I thought he was a fucking brat when he was first introduced. I didn't hate him. I still liked him, and I still liked him more than Zeb. But to me, he was a bratty kid. And then watching him evolve to understanding he can't always get what he wants, having the good in his heart. He went from being, I don't know if selfish is too strong of a word for his beginnings, but he went from being selfish to being selfless. And by the end of the show, he would do literally anything for his found family. And I really hope we get to see more of him in future projects, because I really liked his character. And I was reading online too, he's not like super popular in Star Wars projects. Like, this is one of the very last times we ever see him, which shocks me because I know the other characters come back in the Ahsoka show. But like, that's all I have to say about the show. Otherwise, I could keep rambling the same way I did with Clone Wars. a very fun Star Wars adventure. If you aren't watching this simply because it's animated, you are truly missing out. And that is it for this video. I was able to film everything before having to leave for my hockey game. I still have like 20 minutes to spare, so I'm very proud of myself. Oh, one show I forgot to mention, because I started in January, but I finished it in February, so I'm not going to really talk about it until the February wrap-up, and that is Elfen Lied, which is an anime. A lot of people have recommended it to me, but spoiler alert, I did not like this. So y'all will see more of that in the next video. But other than that, let me know your thoughts down below, whether if you've seen these shows, these movies, and or like want to see them. If you have a different opinion than me, let me know down below. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up, comment, subscribe. Y'all know the drill. And without further ado, I'm gonna peace out and I'll see you guys later. Ciao a tutti.